It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hi, thanks for being here. It's Tuesday, February 25th, and I want to start by giving a big thank you to the Southland Friends of Labor. I was out with them at IBEW Local 176 Banquet Hall yesterday morning. They bring together all the different unions, all walks of life, all different kinds of work, electrical work, maritime work, construction work. And the reason they bring it all together is because we are all stronger together. And we are under attack. Unions are under attack in this country. And we are going to have to link arms and join hands and move forward as one. And it was delightful talking to electrical workers and maritime workers from the Port Council, Nurses Association, State Senator Bill Cunningham, and so many more people. It was the beginning of the union resistance for Southland Friends of Labor, or at least the beginning of talking about it so publicly. It was a wonderful experience, and thank you, Southland Friends of Labor, for inviting WCPT, and for so many of the union people who came up and said that they listened to us every day, starting with Richard Chu all the way through, and we are very grateful, very, very grateful for that. Okay, usually when I start the day, first of all, do you like how I interrupt myself? I'd probably be angry if somebody else did that to me. But I interrupt myself all the time. I start to say something like, well, wait, you should say this other thing first. Okay. The phone lines are open, as they are every weekday, 773-763-9278. Paul Shivari is dying to talk to you on the telephone and send along your information to me. You can also text us on that phone number the first hour of every show, except for Friday, where we do the whole first half of the show, just talking about the news of the day and talking to you. So here we go. I usually start with something that's going on the national level, but it was just posted late morning today in the Chicago Tribune that former Governor Jim Edgar has announced that he, since last month, has been battling pancreatic cancer. Jim Edgar, 78 years old, was governor from 1991 to 1999, still active, leading a program at the University of Illinois to train future political leaders. He wrote that he and his wife Brenda are facing a new significant challenge. Doctors at Rush have determined I have pancreatic cancer that has spread. They and docs from the Mayo Clinic are coordinating on a treatment regimen I am following initially in Arizona, where we spend the winter, then later in Springfield when we return. We do not underestimate this challenge, but we have confidence in the medical team helping us address it. He first got this diagnosis mid-January. He's already had 3 chemotherapy treatments, but he said, I guess I'm still kind of in denial, so I can kind of get by each day. It just came out of the blue. I didn't have any symptoms or anything. But the doctors at Mayo Clinic said, don't let anybody tell you you've got this long or that long to live. He said, because everybody's different. And I can speak from personal experience that is definitely the case. People who've been told they have months to live ending up living years and years. People who believe they have more time suddenly succumbing. But Jim Edgar says he is going to stick with treatment. He told the doctors, guys, I'm a pessimist. I lost my first election, but I don't want to die. He has a lot going on with his family that he wants to be there for. And that kind of goal can sometimes be really important in getting you through. Knowing that there's some event, whether it's a wedding or a birthday or a graduation, something that you really, really want to be a part of, that can really help you in your efforts to stick with what is often a difficult regimen. I'm not saying it's that way for every cancer, but for a lot of cancers, it's not a walk in the park. So, Jim Edgar, our thoughts, our positive thoughts are winging their way to you. Pancreatic cancer, nothing to sneeze at, but he's got a good attitude, and he apparently has very good medical help. And that's about all you can do, really, is have a good attitude and good doctors. Right now, Democrats, there have been so many town hall meetings. Well, first of all, Republicans get yelled at in general, and Democrats have been, shall we say, encouraged to do more, to be more out there, to be more vocal. And they have taken these comments to heart. Big demonstration outside the U.S. Capitol just a little while ago. Senator Chris Murphy was there. Senator Jeff Merkley was there. Congressperson Greg Casar from Texas was there. Out and loud and proud right now. Greg Casar, we always, when we go to Texas, we have a tendency to find whatever Jasmine Crockett has been up to and saying. But Greg Casar, man, he is definitely somebody to watch. He is not taking any prisoners. He was part of a congressional hearing February 12th, so almost a couple of weeks ago. Again, Greg Casar represents Texas 35th District, and there was a congressional hearing called by none other than Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah. And it was to talk about Doge and Elon Musk. And as you probably have already guessed, it wasn't really to look in to, say, conflicts of interest of Elon Musk acquiring sensitive government data, not only your personal information, but information about his competitors and their contracts with the government. So this guy is supposed to be investigating government waste while he receives millions and millions of dollars in government contracts. And, oh, by the way, some of the access that he now has will give him information on his competitors. Yeah, that seems right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That seems exactly like how you would want government waste and inefficiency to be sifted out. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, there was this hearing that Marjorie Taylor Greene, bleach blonde, butch body, according to Jasmine Crockett, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who wanted to find out, let's explore Elon Musk and all the wonderful things he's doing in Doge. Well, Congressman Greg Casar was there, and he was having none of it. He understood that it was a dog and pony show, but he was not there to play. I want you to listen to this.
Do you know how much money a day Mr. Musk will receive from the federal government for his contracts?
No.
The answer is $8 million a day. Just last year, Elon Musk was promised $3 billion from close to 100 contracts with the federal government. Ms. Royal, do you know how much the average person in this country who survives on Social Security, one of our seniors who's worked their entire life, about how much they have to survive on a day?
I do not.
$65 a day. We're not looking into Elon Musk's $8 million a day. This subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Republicans, is looking into your grandmother's $65 a day. When Republicans talk about government efficiency in this Congress, they're not looking into billionaires who don't pay their taxes. They're not looking into billionaires who get rich off of government contracts. They're not looking into Elon Musk firing watchdogs who are supposed to keep him accountable. They're looking at cutting your public schools. They're going straight for your Social Security. They're coming straight for cancer research. They're coming straight for the Department of Education. They're not looking at big tech. They're not looking at big pharma because those people fund their campaigns. If this committee were serious about rooting out waste from our federal government, then today's whole hearing would be about how Musk and Donald Trump are firing the independent watchdogs who've done this work for decades. Instead, my Republican colleagues' actual goal on this committee is to distract from Trump and from Musk's corrupt war on accountability. This will not be a subcommittee dedicated to making government efficient for everyday people. It's about helping Elon Musk and Donald Trump be as efficient as possible in robbing our government and handing out our government services to the rich.
So, like I said, big protest on Capitol Hill. A lot of Democratic lawmakers are getting out there and having their voices heard. You know, there was a protest in Chicago. Hakeem Jeffries was here on his book tour. And Rachel Maddow talked about the protest. She had Hakeem Jeffries on. He is back in Washington. It appeared that's where he was doing the interview from. And she kind of very gingerly said, you know, people want you guys to do more. I'm summarizing her question. She said it nicely, but it was clearly people want to see more from their reps, from their senators. And he said that he understood that the message had gotten through. And, you know, he didn't say, you know, we need to step up. He didn't say we haven't done enough. We're going to do more. He said it very politically, but he was like, yeah, his answer was basically, yeah, we hear people. We hear people, we understand, and we're going to be out there. Let me give you an example. You may have heard this already because this sound clip from a town hall in Albany, New York, where a teacher got up to speak to Representative Paul Tonko, the Democratic congressperson who was having a town hall in Albany. And this teacher said to his representative, again, a Democrat. This is not one of those sound clips where I've played for you where people are screaming at their Republicans saying, you know, what are you doing? What are you doing to push back? What are you doing to fight back? And most of the Republicans are trying to shut them down or say, oh, well, you know, Trump's really cool and he's doing great things and we love Elon. And people start screaming at their Republican representatives. Well, people have been just as vocal, just as passionate, and frankly, just as loud when they have been going to Democratic town halls. Not because they don't like Donald Trump, but this isn't where they're trying to get a Republican to change course. This is where they are trying to encourage a Democrat to do more. This clip has made the rounds, but I think it is just an absolute beautiful example of Democrats telling their representation, get out there and fight. Be loud, make noise, wave your hands around, do whatever it takes, because we are there with you. Again, this was Albany, New York, at a town hall that was held by Democrat Representative Paul Tonko. And this person who got up to speak was a teacher. And I think what this teacher had to say to the congressman is really worth hearing again. Listen to this.
I'm a 20-year veteran teacher. As I said, I've been behind you in local stores. You came to the 100th anniversary of the Albany Library branch celebration where my band played inside. Okay? I saw you on TV at NOAA. I saw you on TV at the Department of Education. What I'm saying is this. Somebody asked you what your red line was, and you said that the time is always right to go. Does that mean the red line has already been crossed? Because I think it has. If you ask us to show up, Congressman Tonko, we will show up. But we have to take the gloves off. We can't wait for protocol. They're not playing by the rules. We have to take it through them. When I saw you at those places, I saw you next to Maxine Waters. Again, I was so proud that my representative was on the front line, right there. But I thought about Jimmy Carter, and I thought about John Lewis. And I know what John Lewis would have done. He would have gotten arrested that day. Make them outlaw you. We will stand behind you. We will be there with you. I will get arrested with you. I will do it.
I will be there with you. I will be arrested with you. I can do it. And you heard the applause. What you didn't hear was those people were on their feet. It was a standing ovation. The people in that town hall were ready to stand with Paul Tonko and yell with Paul Tonko and get arrested with Paul Tonko if that's what it takes. And that is the message that we, you, me, all the people who are listening to this is us. People like us at those town halls sending the message that we want more, that we need more from our elected officials. And I think we're going to get more from our elected officials. Let's go to the phone lines. Jim is on the line from Chicago. Hey, Jim.
How are you? Joan, our omnipotent leader and his subjects that are close to him have, you see the Germany election, the Nazi Party got 20% there. They were coached by our vice president, and Elon Musk was so proudly happy about it that he said, oh, this is a great thing. But, Joan, this is spreading throughout Europe. Now, somebody's got to convince me how the adoration for this person in the United States, 75 million of them adore this man. For what reason, I have no idea. But the point is, it's spreading. They're used, those Nazi Party in Germany said Trump did it. Macron in France, Trump could do it. If Trump can take over the United States, we could take over Europe. Now, this is spreading across the globe. And that is really, honest to God, Joan, never did I ever believe I would get to a position where this is spreading like COVID. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's I don't know how to describe it. It's
absolutely indescribable. My only hope is that we are going to see, we saw, like last week, the Wall Street Journal interviewed some Trump supporters, and a couple of them, women, were like, I can't believe I voted for this guy. I'm so embarrassed. I bought into the lies. But there were a couple of guys who were like, I love what he's doing. He's done more in a few weeks than other presidents do in the whole 4 years. And those are the people who are going to continue to feel that way until what Trump is doing starts to affect them. There was a piece. I saw it on television, so I don't know what news outlet it was on. Might have been CNN, but yes, it was CNN. It was John King. He used to be an anchor. Now he travels the country. And he was talking to a couple of Trump people, but he was in Denver or in Colorado. And he talked to this one young guy who was like, yeah, I voted for Trump because, well, probably because Kamala was a black woman. But he said something like, I just felt that it was the only choice I had. But I really don't like what I'm seeing. You know, I have friends who are immigrants. And, you know, I thought it was going to be only go after the bad immigrants. But he said the Hispanic people I know are really frightened. And that's not right. It shouldn't be like that. And he was really saying that, like a lot of Trump people who some people just really wanted Trump to just break things, okay? If they feel that extreme, they're probably still feeling okay about themselves. But some people see the extreme actions that Trump and Musk are taking, and they're starting to think to themselves that this wasn't such a good choice. That this wasn't what they thought they were voting for. Yeah.
But Joan, the selfishness is it must appeal to them. Selfishness must appeal to these voters, even in Europe, because there's a certain amount of avarice in all this, because Trump explains everything in money. What about the woman in Idaho? I think she was a doctor. She got up to speak about Medicaid, and she was accosted by brown shirts, taken out of the room like some kind of a fugitive. So, I mean, I didn't see that. Yeah, oh, yeah. You can expect this in the United States of America. There's no question about it. Because these people believe that he has got some supernatural power, Joe. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Anyway, thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Joe. Jim. I appreciate the call. It is, we are coming up on 2:30. We are going to continue to talk about the news of the day. Oh, yeah, one other big thing. There may or may not, my guess is probably not, be a vote. There may or may not be a vote in Congress on the new budget. Mike Johnson put together exactly what Donald Trump said he wanted. One big, beautiful bill. And It was originally thinking they'd have a vote today. That didn't look so good. They weren't sure they had the votes. At least one Republican has already said if there are cuts to Medicaid, he's not voting for it. A Republican from a Pennsylvania swing state area. And apparently Mike Johnson doesn't have the votes, because then he started saying, well, maybe tonight, maybe later tonight, we'll vote on it. And so we will see. Remember, if they lose 3 Republicans, they have lost the vote. No Democrat. There is not a single Democrat that is going to vote for this budget. There is already one Republican who says he's out. 2 more Republicans back away from this, and they don't get this voted on or passed. Eventually, if that happens, Mike Johnson is going to do what Donald Trump doesn't want, but the only way to make it work, and split it up into separate bills. Sadly, kids, that unless the Republicans really decide that they don't want to see an increased deficit, a big deficit, there will be that big tax cut for the rich. If they get their members in line and can get everybody to vote yes, then they will accomplish that. We'll see. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We spend the first hour of every show taking your calls, reading your texts, talking about the news of the day. Let's go back to the phone lines. Earl is on the line from Hyde Park. Hello, Earl.
Hi, Joan. Thanks for taking my call. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good. How are you?
Kind of sad, but I'll work my way out of it. I wanted to make 2 comments quickly. One was on the End of Times program before you came on. A lady was outraged at the Democratic Party for not doing enough of winning the elections. and she was blaming the Democrats. Let's not get it twisted. The problem that we have is not the Democrats, it's the Republican Party and the big donors and the media hype behind them. Now, we can criticize the work that the Democrats are doing, but the folks that are voting for Trump are the problems, and not the Democrats per se. We can work harder, we can put more investment into the acts, but we are the victims. We are not the cause of the problem. And I just want to say that I'm really afraid that this is going to be generational. The problems that Elon and Donald Trump are doing to this government is going to be far-reaching, long-lasting, and you don't make changes overnight because you know our government never works quickly.
That seems to be the biggest fear of some of the political scientists and historians. Not that we cannot come back from this brink, but that it is not going to be a quick fix. It is going to be a long, drawn-out slog back to where we were.
And the money backers are still going to be there. The people that voted for Trump, by and large, are still going to be there because I still think at the root of our problem and everything on top of that starts with race. When you see all of those people lined up at the borders, they were used as to promote fear, anxiety in white people across the country in particular, and some blacks and some Asian too, who don't understand what's happening. They don't realize that even though people were coming into the country, a whole lot of people were still being kicked out of the country. And
I agree with you. I think a huge part of it is race. Even that young man that John King interviewed on CNN, he said, well, I really didn't feel like I had a choice in voting for president because why? Because Kamala was what, a woman? Because she was of mixed race? Why did you feel you didn't have a choice? But John King just let the guy talk. He didn't challenge him on that. But who was going to say? Who's going to look at John King with a camera running and say, oh, well, actually I'm a racist and a misogynist. Yeah.
Well, there are a few of them out there. But
more than a few, Earl.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately, yeah. Well, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Earl.
And thanks for listening to me.
Appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Let's go to Michigan now. Ron is on the line in Michigan. Hey, Ron, thanks for calling in.
Hello, Joan. Joan, these are very serious times. These are the times that, we've got to actually believe, or if you can disbelieve it, that once the Republicans take total control of the military and all the apparatus, they will start concentration camps for minorities and liberals. Plain and simple. If you don't think so, I've been preaching this white supremacy stuff for years, and finally people, grab hold of it, before it's too, but it may be too late. But Tom Hartman brought this up. We need protests. I'm going to tell you, I'm a Vietnam veteran against the war. I went to Vietnam to protest the war. Okay, and during those protests, you have Vietnam veterans. They stage die-ins. Okay, phony firefights at the Capitol. But the thing of it is, we got to stage die-ins now. But this has got to be the real thing, plain and simple.
Yeah, people will actually be dying this time around.
They are dying. Terminally ill people are dying from the lack of health care, from the aid. And what's got to be done, this is radical. You got to bring terminally ill patients, people who are dying, you got to bring them to the protests and lay them out. But of course, with their willing participation, as long as they want
participation.
To go along with it.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And the thing of it is, it's got to be done. And the self-mobilizations that the monks did in Vietnam to protest the war, that's going to happen here. It's going to have to happen here. And again, terminally ill people, if I'm dying of Agent Orange, I want to find a way to go that's going to benefit my people, my country. Not the fascist right wing, because they want to kill me, and if they get the chance, and they're going to get the chance if we give them. But these are things that we're going to have to really consider, plain and simple, because you're either going to die in a protest or defending your rights, or you're going to willingly march to your death in a concentration camp. And it ain't going to be me, plain and simple. But it's a little radical, Joan, but we are in the most radical times I've ever seen, okay?
You know what? Ordinarily, I would not be a fan of radical, but I'm coming around, Ron.
I don't want to, Jane, but I don't want to. I don't want to. But
I hear you. Ron, I want to try to get another call in before we go to break. Thank you so much for that. Let's go to our good friend Dave from Hoffman Estates. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Joan. Hey, did you see the story where a Southwest jet narrowly avoids hitting a private plane
at Midway? Yeah.
And apparently that private plane had went out without any authorization onto the runway.
Wow. Yeah. The Southwest jet at Midway Airport was getting ready to land, and somehow a private jet sort of snuck in ahead of it, and they had to do one of those where they gun the engines, pull it up, and circle around.
Yeah, that Southwest was coming down, and that private one would have been broadside of it, where it was crossing in front of them.
Yeah.
They were showing a video of the thing. So who needs the FAA, right?
We don't need all those air traffic controllers. Oh.
Hey, Joan, I'll leave you with this one, a little bit more of a chuckle thought. That just thinking on that yesterday or so when they had that news conference, that joint conference with Macron, wouldn't it have been great if Macron would have said, "Mon Dieu, Monsieur Pepe Le Pew"?
Yeah. Well, you could tell Donald Trump didn't like being corrected. For those of you who didn't see the video, Macron and Trump were sitting, in front of the fireplace, and Trump starts going on about how it's unfair because, the money that the United States gave Ukraine, we just gave it to them. We're not getting any of it back. But Europe, they've structured the money they gave Ukraine as loans, and they're going to get it all back. And Macron was like, actually, that's not true. That's not true. That is actually not true. And if you look at the military aid and the humanitarian aid, the European nations have contributed exactly the same amount monetarily as the United States. The only difference being the European nations have a much lower gross national product than we do. So, yes, we gave the amount that's equivalent, but for us, it's literally a drop in the bucket, whereas for them, it is several drops in the bucket. Yeah. So, and Donald, and after Macron spoke, Donald was like, well, you sort of like, you can think what you want to think, but I know what I know.
I'll close with, did you happen to hear Stephanie Miller today where they said either some of these aides or something that they had to put Vicks underneath their nose because Trump sounded like or smelled like steak diarrhea or something?
Well, ordinarily, like how somebody dresses or their appearance or their smell, that would ordinarily be off limits. But Donald Trump is famous for having a terrible smell. Adam Kinzinger, there was a great documentary. I think it's called something like The Last Republican. I really encourage you to see it. I'm a liberal, and I really enjoyed it. Adam Kinzinger said on camera, the guy smells, and everybody knows it. And Adam Kinzinger used a very colorful set of body parts to describe how Donald Trump smells, but we don't need to go there right now.
Diplomatically did it. So.
Yeah.
All right, have a good one, Joe.
Thank you, Dave.
Be well.
Mm-hmm. Let's get one more call in before we go to break. Ron is on the line from Chicago. Hi, Ron.
Hi,
Thanks for the call.
Yes, Elon Musk, he got another government contract today. This time.
Did he now? He really could use the help.
Yeah,
yes. We don't have to have a GoFundMe page, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And is anybody counting how many contracts he has? I haven't counted.
I read where somebody did count it up, but I can't remember the number right now, and I don't want to just guess. So yeah.
Well,
mm-hmm.
I heard 100. I don't know, but anyway, and 21 staffers from this Doge resigned today because basically they said that Trump and Elon Musk don't know what they're doing, which is true.
Somebody's saying the quiet part out loud, huh, Ron?
Oh yes, they put in writing, yes, and that's all I have. I had something else. I can't remember.
Well, thank you for the call, Ron. We are going to get to a break, and we are going to go back to the phone lines when we come right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
As I told you, we are also going to be Resistance Central here. So remember, it is this Friday, the 28th, that it is the Don't Buy Anything. Keep your credit cards and your debit cards in your wallet. Don't order anything online. If there's an emergency and you have to buy something, try to use it. Go to a mom and pop store and get your emergency rations there. But for 24 hours, from midnight when Friday begins till midnight when Friday ends, we are not going to be spending any money. Okay? It's going to make things a little tricky since Friday is Ray and Mai's anniversary. And we did have plans to eat out, but I think I'm going to talk to him when I get off the air, and I'm afraid we're going to cancel that reservation, though I hate to hurt a local business because I know restaurants operate on pretty small margins. So it's something that I'm going to have to think about. It isn't a chain restaurant. It is a mom-and-pop restaurant. I already kind of messed up Valentine's Day. I don't want to mess up the anniversary, too. Would you know that I'm not the romantic one in this relationship? Anyway, moving on. Let's go back to the phone lines. Bobby's on the line from Indiana. Hello. How are you today, Bob?
I'm sorry about Friday, but when you said that you were running out of time and you had a lot of calls waiting, I decided to drop out so someone else could get in.
Well, that's very kind of you.
That's why I did that. But anyway, the whole gist of it was I wanted to let you know that Uncle Elon's chainsaw had taken a hunk out of me last week, apparently, when they announced that starting April 1st, there's supposed to be no more home health television.
Yeah. That's they're doing away with telehealth. I was talking about that. So anybody who has a great deal of difficulty with transportation, either you can't drive or maybe you live in a rural area, maybe you're disabled and you've been relying on telehealth, which, by the way, is very economical. It's if they were going to do a cost savings, to eliminate telehealth makes no sense. It makes no sense. It is the cheapest way to have a medical visit. But you're right. As of April 1st, telehealth is supposed to go by the wayside.
Yeah, but I'm here in Indiana, and there's one heck of a lot of hicks out here in the sticks. Trump flag wavers that need that, use that, and now they're not going to get it.
Well, this is the kind of stuff that you and I saw on the horizon, but other people who either weren't paying attention or didn't believe Trump was going to do what he said he was going to do, they're now going to have to live through this with the rest of us and feel the pain. And I think there's going to be a lot of people saying to their neighbors, this isn't what I voted for. This isn't what I voted for. Or as I like to put it, how's that working out for you? How's that Trump vote working out for you?
Here's my motto. Anytime you hear Trump say something that you know is bad or is going to cause harm, that is something you can take to the bank and believe him on, because he will try to do anything like that.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Anyway, that's the story from out here on the prairie, the little home on the prairie.
Well, thank you, Bobby. And, maybe because I think that when this hurts Republicans, the Republicans are going to start making noise and they're going to start pushing back. And Donald Trump wants very much to only hurt liberals and Democrats. So if somebody can make it plain to him that he's hurting his own voters, maybe they will back off of this. That's the only hope we've got left, Bobby.
Well, I called my congressman. I've been calling him, Joan. I call him at least twice a week. They don't even need my name. They say, "Are you Mr. Winkler?" And so I'm going to probably be calling him again tomorrow.
Well, good.
But I keep on them, and
I mean, you're a constituent, and you're being hurt by this. Isn't that what they should? Isn't that what they should be working against? Silly me.
They hit my Medicaid, but I'm still here.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to hit my Medicare, but I'll still be here. But when they hit my Social Security, I'm out of here. Because that's the one thing with that torpedo I can't take.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you, Bobby. Thanks for the call, and stay in touch, okay?
Nighty-night.
Nighty-night. We're going to go back to the phone lines. Steve is on the line from the Gold Coast. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Thank you. Could we perhaps organize another one of these boycotts in April? And that's when my anniversary falls. So, if any way we could convince the country, it would save me a few dollars. But in any case, I digress. We had discussed this before. A lot of people made this prediction, except it's coming true a lot earlier than we thought. Usually you get that 100-day honeymoon. But, given how radical of an agenda they've set up, you've already seen, Republicans start to waver. And prior to this, it was, okay, I can't go against the Trump White House because, I'm going to be primaried and, we've got elections coming up in less than 2 years. I don't want to fall on that side of it. And the other side is that, now you're seeing, people mobilizing, not just Democrats. Of course, Democrats weren't going to vote for you if you were a Republican congressman, but independents and now Republicans who, got sold a bill of goods. Not like they didn't know. They really had no excuse. When someone tells you who they are, don't be surprised if that's who they turn out to be. And so now, you've got congressmen who are out there saying, hey, look, Donald Trump may not be worried about another term, but I am. And they have to make these tough choices because there are still congressional districts where, they swing back and forth from Democrat to Republican. And, and as you pointed out, there's only a handful of people who distinguish between the Republican and Democratic parties in terms of voting power in the House currently. And so, all it takes is for a couple of people to say no. I'm not going to vote that way. It's not in my interest.
Apparently, I get the impression that that's what's happening to Mike Johnson right now, that that he's not going to call this budget vote unless he knows he's got it in the bag. And I don't think he's got the votes. I think he's getting pushback. At least one Republican has said very publicly they're not going to vote for this budget. And all it takes is two more to tank it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are entire states in this country that rely on the federal government for half of their operating budgets.
Yep.
They're very poor states. I mean, and you start to cut people off at the knees, and, hey, those people are the ones who voted for Donald Trump, and they're going to wonder why. And when you start to close things, and, let's be clear, there are plenty of Democrats who recognize that there is fraud and waste and abuse in government. Okay, that's fine. There is a responsible way to go about addressing this. This is not the way. Mm-hmm. And, just
I agree.
Simply this baby with the bathwater nonsense. And, I mean, how many times do they need to be fact-checked on nonsense? I had a conversation with somebody the other day who, claimed that, we sent tens of millions of dollars in condoms to Gaza. No, he didn't.
Oh, my God, not that one again.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my. How does, I mean, the person who was espousing that's so stupid. That's so stupid. We don't give away free condoms here in the United States. Why on earth would we buy condoms for Gaza? It is just so many of the things, so many of the Republican talking points you hear people say, like, I know Joe Biden spent $9 billion on 4 electric chargers. That doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Well, there's the stuff that's just patently false. And then there's things that have been misconstrued because they've been framed in the wrong way. So, yes, the United States does have international aid bodies that we help to fund. And part of that, in terms of the distribution of condoms, has to do with the prevention of the spread of HIV. Well, it turns out that, some idiot, over in Doge didn't understand that there's more than one place in the world that defines itself as Gaza. One of the places that define itself as Gaza is a region in Mozambique. It's called Gaza. And Mozambique has among the highest rates of AIDS in the world. And so, yes, we help fund international organizations that do provide condoms because it turns out condoms are a lot cheaper in preventing the spread of AIDS than it is to provide very expensive medicines to help people who have AIDS. So, yes, great investment as far as, we're trying to curtail AIDS. But, guess what? That's in Africa. Nowhere near the Gaza you're talking about. But, nobody bothered to look at a map or, just do a Wikipedia search, So, I mean, this is what happens. This is what happens every day. It's, we're not batting 1,000. Sorry about that. Except that when you're talking about these kinds of programs, people do need to be able to just kind of do a basic Google search before you start doing this stuff. Literally, a high schooler could do this. But now, sorry about that. Call back the nuclear regulatory guys, who oversee our stockpiles and so forth, because, we don't need them. Wait, we can't contact them. We shut down their email accounts. There was literally an interview with a guy who said that a friend had told him, hey, it turns out you need to go back to work. I'm like, they didn't contact me about it. Well, yeah, get in touch with somebody. Yeah, he called his old boss, and then they told him to come back in. I mean, this is where we're operating. And so, like I said, I mean, there are a lot of people who believe that Donald Trump's numbers, I know polls don't always get it right, but there's going to come a point in the near future when the poll numbers are so bad for him, possibly so bad for him, and the whole MAGA thing, that a lot of congressmen are going to start to run for cover, Republican congressmen, and they're going to say no. And when their constituents are yelling at them and the polls say that, they're heading for disaster, I think that there's going to be a stopgap measure on this. And let's keep in mind that the Republicans who love to use the whole filibuster thing, for many years, well, now we as Democrats, we have the opportunity to use it. There are more than 40 of us.
Exactly.
In the United States Senate. So, I mean, you want to, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
We need to take a page out of the Mitch McConnell, slow it down, make it difficult, make it painful for them to get anything done playbook.
Exactly. And you can actually tap Mitch because Mitch has decided not to run again. So he grew a spine just before he decided not to run again. Except
I don't think he really did. I think those 2 no votes on the cabinet nominees, I think he knew that his vote wasn't going to matter and they were going to get seated anyway, because when it came to the vote on Kash Patel, if Mitch McConnell had voted no on Kash Patel, it would be, there were already Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and I think one other person were already voting no, and Mitch would have been the vote that could have prevented Kash Patel from being seated. And in that vote, guess which way Mitch voted? He voted yes. So I think it was all a ruse. I don't think it was anything more than that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it could be just as much the fact that he wants to stick his thumb in the eye of Donald Trump. There's no love lost between those two. And then on his way out, Mitch is just like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to hurt my party, but if I have a chance to stick it to Donald, I'm going to. You know, what do I have to lose? So, yeah. I mean, but I've been saying this for a long time. You know, don't be fooled by this whole, you know, left, right, Democrat, Republican. There's a lot more dynamics at play here. And so, yeah, so, you know, like I say, it's going to be an interesting, you know, spring and summer. And, you know, who knows? I mean, if things get really bad enough for Republicans, you could see, like I say, a big sea change as far as what the midterms offer up. This has happened before in history. It's political overreach. Somebody wins an election. They think that they have a mandate that doesn't really exist. Then they overreach. And then what happens is a huge backlash. And so
we shall see. Yeah, we shall see. Steve, thank you so much for the call.
Thank you.
We have got to get to the news. We are going to do that, and we're going to talk to political science professor Joel Ostro when we come back after the news.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
You probably heard about the United Nations vote. The United Nations vote, it was a non-binding resolution urging Russian withdrawal from Ukraine. 93 countries voted in favor, 65 abstained, 18 voted against it. 18 countries voted against a non-binding resolution urging Russia's withdrawal from Ukraine, pointing the finger at Russia for the fact that this is happening. General Mark Hertling reacted by saying this vote by the United States is staggering, not standing against a violation of international law and not condemning the massive number of war crimes of Russia will affect U.S. security and damage our alliances and national reputation. I'm ashamed of this action. Historian Simon Skama said, a new low, a day of utmost shame and infamy, a deep stain on American history, voting with tyrants, the likes of North Korea and Iran. And founder of the Independent Veterans of America, Paul Reichhoff, who was interviewed on his podcast by Charlie Sykes. Paul Reichhoff, again, founder of Independent Veterans of America, said this: what a disgrace for our nation on the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Trump has put America firmly on the side of the bad guys. With Russia, North Korea, Belarus, and Hungary, Americans are embarrassed, our allies are stunned, and the hashtag our enemies are celebrating is flourishing. Trump does not speak for most Americans on Ukraine with votes like this. Most Americans support Ukraine, and an overwhelming majority of American veterans support Ukraine, even if our radical and reckless president does not. When I invited Professor Joel Ostro from Benedictine University to join me on the air today, it was to talk about the third anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But it seems that there is more to talk about. The fact that the United States apparently has decided that the axis of evil could use another member. Joel Ostro joins us now. Hey, you know what? This is a switch. I'm being the Debbie Downer today, Joel.
It is kind of a continuation of our discussion last week, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. I guess we should have seen this coming?
Oh, yeah, no, it's no surprise. We knew it was coming. And it's interesting.
But don't you think there were still people who held out hope that even though he's obviously making a lot of pro-Putin noises and pro-Putin moves, that he wouldn't want to be so public in the fact that he's now all in with Russia, that, he likes to let people think that, he's not as bad as he is, and now he's showing us he is as bad as he is.
Anyone who thought otherwise wasn't paying enough attention, I'm sorry to say, Joan, because it's not just Donald Trump. Look at everything that Hegseth has said over the last 3 years. Look at everything that Tulsi Gabbard has said and done over the last 3 years. Look at everything that Walz has said and done over the last 3 years, the National Security Advisor. And then you look at the other people around Trump. It is difficult to find the words to accurately capture what has happened. It is certainly scandalous, but I do disagree with the last person you quoted. This is the ruler of our country, and we did install him. The American people support this horrific action because we're not in the streets. Our elected officials are not doing anything about it. Nobody's doing anything about it. The military is not doing anything about it. The Secret Service isn't doing anything about it. The FBI isn't doing anything about it. Nobody's doing anything about it. The United States is a rogue state now. And our allies are thrilled because our allies are mass murdering dictatorships, committing genocide, are terrorist states and state sponsors of terrorism, are the most closed, murderous authoritarian regimes the human race has ever known, referring to North Korea. Those are our closest allies. Our adversaries are the democracies, the liberal capitalist democracies. And that is what is so scandalous and shocking and catastrophic for the world. It will be a catastrophe. I don't really see any way around it. What that catastrophe looks like, I don't know, but it is difficult to see how, for those of us who still support the truths that we're supposed to hold to be self-evident, how those states that still embrace them will be able to weather the tumult that the shift in the United States of America means. It is going to require a complete readjustment of every country to the new reality that the United States is a rogue state. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed right now of our country. It is difficult for me to even want to call myself American. It's embarrassing and it's inexcusable. But we have done this. We've allowed it to happen.
There was a bulletin. I don't see an extended article on it yet. But in the last half hour, there was a bulletin topping the Washington Post saying that the framework of an agreement for Ukraine to give us their rare minerals has been worked out. In case you're in the audience and you don't know what I'm talking about, Donald Trump has said to Ukraine mines these minerals. Calling them rare earth minerals isn't exactly accurate, but they're rare, and we want them. And Donald Trump basically said to Zelensky, you give us those and we might continue to aid you. And then the message changed, and it was like, you should give those to us because you owe us for all the money we've already spent. You just should simply pony up those minerals as a payment. And it's been a very controversial, very Trumpian quid pro quo kind of a thing. And I don't know what.
Misreported.
Yeah, I don't know what
the misreported. Here's why Ukraine is quite happy to sign that agreement, because in order for Ukraine to be able to live up to that commitment, Ukraine, with support from the United States and its allies, would have to kick Russia out of the territory it occupies, because the territory Russia occupies contains most of those minerals that agreement would cover. And you are correct that Trump and his clan that controls this country now is demanding now those minerals as payment for money already given. Can I speak to a moment about U.S. spending on Ukraine since the beginning of 2022?
Absolutely.
Because it is shocking. So since the beginning of 2022, so 3 years and 1 month by this data, the United States gave in military aid, so we're talking about ammunition, weapon systems, military equipment of all kinds, roughly $68 billion. There's a rounding error in there, but let's call it $68 billion because it doesn't affect the overall impact. That's $68 billion of military spending on Ukraine amounts to 0.3% of total U.S. spending. But that number's not relevant because we always compare countries in terms of their foreign aid commitments, not on their spending, but on their gross domestic product. Why? Because gross domestic product reflects the ability of a country to spend on a political priority.
Oprah donates $100,000. Yeah, somewhere, and it's like small change. Joan Esposito donates $100,000, and that's front page news because of
capacity to pay. The country's capacity. If we chose to tax the rich more, we could do more, whether domestically on healthcare or in foreign aid. So, as a percentage of our gross domestic product since the beginning of 2022, that $68 billion of military spending amounts to 0.08%, not 8%, 0.08% of our gross domestic product. Now, if you want to talk about total American aid to Ukraine, so that would include helping to keep their energy infrastructure alive, medical assistance, food assistance, and the rest, then we're talking 0.15% of 1% of our gross domestic product. As a comparison, Germany in that time on total aid has given 4 times the amount compared to the United States. Denmark has given, what would that be, 20 times the amount of the United States. And the rest of Europe falls somewhere between that 4 times and 20 times. Canada's given almost 5 times that amount in terms of percentage of gross domestic product. And even still, that exaggerates the picture because let's go back to that military spending, as we talked about before many times. That $68 billion, of the $68 billion, roughly $5 billion has actually reflected in things given to Ukraine. The money goes primarily, oddly enough, to what we would call red states, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, into the defense industries, to the factories, the military-industrial complex, to replace the weapons that we have sent. The weapons that we send to Ukraine come from our existing stockpiles. The money that we spend goes to replace those with newer, more capable, more advanced weapons that employs Americans who get paid union wages, good wages with benefits, money that goes back into the economy when they buy cars, build houses, and the like. So about 62 of the 68 billion in military spending actually is spending on the U.S. economy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It reflects that, and let's not say that the Trump administration doesn't know what they're talking about. Certainly, the person occupying the Oval Office has no idea what he's talking about. But the people around him know exactly what they're talking about, and they're thieves.
Ives, this is something that I haven't talked about recently, but we have gone over this in the past, that it's a win-win for the United States when we support Ukraine, because that's exactly it. We don't send them the brand new stuff. We send them what we've got, and then we buy brand new stuff for us.
So the question becomes, what kind of deal has Trump and Musk and Vaught and Bezos and Zuckerberg? What is going into their pockets from the Kremlin? Because that is the only possible explanation. What are they going to get from that murderous, genocidal government that so enamors them of allying with, as you put it accurately, the axis of evil and joining that axis of evil rather than honoring the commitments developed over 250 years and solidified over the last 80 years? What justifies annihilating all of that? Only a few people are going to enrich themselves even more than the filthy rich that they already control.
We are joined by political science professor Joel Ostrow. We are talking about the third anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the fact that the United States seems to be one of the bad guys these days. We're going to take a break and be back right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Political science professor Joel Ostrow from Benedictine University joins me. We are talking about Ukraine. I found the write-up of the framework. Siobhan O'Grady writes about it in the Washington Post. The U.S. and Ukraine have agreed to a framework for an expansive minerals deal, according to a Ukrainian official. The White House has not confirmed. The Trump administration had pushed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to repay U.S. war aid with such an agreement amid broader pressure to come to a peace deal with Russia. The framework for the deal would grant Washington access to Ukrainian mineral wealth on, quote, much better terms, unquote, than those offered in an earlier proposal that Zelensky was not swift to accept. It does not include any mention of $500 billion, a figure that Trump told Fox News he wanted in equivalent rare earth minerals to repay U.S. war aid to Ukraine. Zelensky firmly rejects claims that Washington has sent $500 billion to Ukraine, saying the figure is closer to $100 billion in aid to Ukraine.
That includes the non-military aid.
Yeah,
it's about
the philanthropy, the humanitarian stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you also saw this, Joel. It was reported yesterday or the day before, because, Donald Trump was saying, there need to be fresh elections in Ukraine, something that is utterly impractical. So Zelensky said, if there were to be certain concessions, like you get Russia out of Ukraine, I will resign. You want me? You want a different government here? I'll quit, but I'm not going to, just quit with no agreement on your side to doing something that we want. What did you think of that?
This is how idiotic those who are running this country now are. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, was on with Piers Morgan, not exactly a Marxist, and was parroting this idiocy that President Zelensky is a dictator because he hasn't stood for elections, and saying the United States was able to hold elections. Franklin Roosevelt ran for re-election twice during the Second World War. And then he asked, how was that possible? And Piers Morgan looked at him like the idiot that Hegseth is and said, nobody was occupying the United States at the time. The United States wasn't fighting for liberating its own territory. And, Hegseth was, hamina, he didn't know what to say to that.
No, he didn't get in that position because he was so bright.
Yeah. It is the utter failure of those, even those I normally consider to be among our better correspondents, whether on CNN or elsewhere, including in print. Why has not a single journalist thrown back at the idiots running this country right now and the criminals? Why have none of them thrown out? Why are you okay with Putin being in power for 26 years and never once holding a free and fair election, having murdered all serious opposition, having exiled all mid-level opposition, having imprisoned all low-level opposition, having seized the assets of any who had dared to donate money to try to support or create political opposition, seizing the assets of those he has not sent to hard labor in the gulag or murdered or exiled? One person has asked why it's okay for Putin to be a dictator who does not stand for election, but it's not okay for Zelensky, whose country is occupied, who was democratically elected, who's fighting for democracy, not only his, but the whole world's democracies. It doesn't make any sense, and it is, you can tell I'm upset by all of this.
Yeah. As any reasonable person would be.
Yeah. And as we talked about last time, all of this that we're talking about today, Ukraine, is only one of those rabbits that I referenced last week. It's a big issue. But this is part of this cult's strategy to overwhelm our society with scandalous after scandalous after scandalous act, which basically incapacitates our ability to respond. And it's all well and good that Friday there's supposed to be, a protest by not purchasing anything. But it's grotesquely insufficient. I mean, at what point are we going to have a national strike that will last day after day after day with people not going into work, not buying anything in the streets? Because that is the only thing that can save some semblance of what our country used to be and used to stand for, and try to recover at least some of it.
Well, there is an effort to have a 24-hour economic boycott, as you know, this Friday, the 28th.
That's not
but
enough.
As far as I know, and I will tell you right now, Joel, my knowledge of history is pathetic at best. But has there ever been anything that caused a national work stoppage? I know there have been obviously work stoppages
in the United States
past.
of America? No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Because we've had a responsive government. Not perfect, but we've had a responsive government. But the ruling entity in this country is not responsive. The Republican Party is not a democratic small d party. It is an authoritarian organization. It's not a normal political party. It's an authoritarian organization that is not about being responsive to anybody other than their dear leader. And so they don't give a hoot. MAGA doesn't care. Never has, doesn't, and never will. It's not about the people. They don't respond to the people. They're not about the people.
I'm talking to political science professor Joel Ostrow. We started off this discussion acknowledging the third anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We are going to be talking more about what is going on here in this country and around the world when we come right back after a break.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm talking to political science professor Joel Ostrow, but before we continue our discussion, I want to play for you a soundbite. Timothy Snyder was on with Lawrence O'Donnell last night. And Timothy Snyder, for those of you who don't know, well, he's written a number of books, but the one that he is most famous for is a very small, very easy to read, very quick to read book called On Tyranny, where he lays out, like the first thing is, basically it's a sort of a how to resist. He talks about things like don't obey in advance. These corporations. Well, even Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago. Nobody told them. They didn't get any notices that they were going to lose federal money, but they were afraid that they would lose federal money. So they announced that a certain care for transgender kids was going to be paused because they were afraid that somebody would see what they were doing and cut off their funds. But they weren't being ordered to do this. They weren't being threatened with a loss of federal funds. They just were obeying in advance. Anyway, Timothy Snyder is a real expert on authoritarianism. He's also a historian. He was on with Lawrence O'Donnell last night, and he talked about the Trump administration siding with Russia at the United Nations, where what we were talking about at the beginning of this discussion, this vote where we allied ourselves with Iran, North Korea, Russia, and against basically the democracies of the world. Listen right now to Timothy Snyder.
If we think to the present and the kinds of claims the Trump administration makes about itself, their whole self-image is that they're the ones who are going toe-to-toe with the dictators. But it's more like, cheek to cheek. I mean, what they're doing is they are creating a world in which life is going to be much easier for dictators and much harder for countries like Ukraine that are trying to be democracies and trying to hold their own.
And like that, not toe-to-toe, but cheek to cheek.
Yeah. I knew Tim long ago. It's been many decades since we've spoken to each other. Sadly, a few, but he's great and he's on the mark and he is really maybe the only one who's had a voice since 2015 as loud as mine, warning of the oncoming dictatorship in the United States of America and how the steps that have been taken step by step with the interruption of the 4 years of the Biden administration, how alarming it has been. The only difference I would have with that clip, and I know that I'm sure in the rest of the context Tim made clear, so I feel comfortable adding this to it, is he sees the United States of America under Trump, under this group that has seized power, as moving away from democracy at a very fast clip. We are far down the path towards dictatorship, and I would say far enough down the path that the democracy we used to have is not recoverable. The institutions that we had, the norms that we had, the system we had. If somehow somebody were able to snap their fingers and make this regime go away, but start from that point going forward, we can't restore the separation of powers and checks and balances, for example, the independent judiciary the way we had it before. There will have to be fundamental systemic changes for us to have anything even approaching a stable democracy again. The ways we
even if the congressional, if the legislative branch, if enough Republican constituents are hurt so that the Republican leaders realize that they will not keep their jobs unless they ameliorate some of the pain that's coming toward their voters. And so that might require resisting, standing up to Trump. Lisa Murkowski did I read that just this morning, where she admonished the Republicans in the Senate to begin standing up to Trump?
She's a hypocrite, as is Susan Collins from Maine. Shame on them both. Shame on McConnell. Shame on all of them. They have no spine. They have no principles. They have no allegiance to the Constitution that they swore an oath to. That organization has abandoned democracy in favor of fealty to the fascist clique that controls this country now, that gives Nazi salutes, that embraces legacy Nazi parties around the world. That organization, and I said this last week, you'll note that I'm careful not to refer to the Trump regime as a government or to the MAGA group as the Republican Party. That's one of the fundamental things that has to go. They have abandoned the norms and principles on which our democracy was founded. They supported the insurrection of January 6th. They continue to spread the lie that the 2020 election was somehow stolen. Even today, people who used to be normal-thinking Republicans uttered to me the incredible, idiotic lie that the Democrats stole the election 4 years ago. That entity can no longer exist. We will not have democracy as long as the Republican Party is a major party, any more than Germany would have democracy if the Nazi Party were allowed to continue after the Second World War. The Republican Party can no longer exist as a significant entity in our politics, and as long as it does, we will not have a democracy, because there cannot be trust in anything under that label, with those people, with that platform, to abide by what is necessary to live up to the principles of equality, liberty, freedom, justice.
I know that you are getting listener response, as am I, on the text line. For instance, Fred texted in, has Trump made any demands on Putin to rebuild or make restitution on all the damage he inflicted on Ukraine? And then Fred understood that this was ridiculous because he ended up with LOL. And somebody else texted in, based on Trump's inexplicable and indefensible actions toward Ukraine, we need to ask ourselves a very disturbing question. Is it now to the point where we can conclude that he is acting like an agent of the Russian Federation? And I know
the United States government is subservient to the Kremlin. Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian agent. Pete Hegseth is a Russian agent. Stephen Miller is a Russian agent. And the President of the United States, if he's not an agent of Putin's, he's certainly a lapdog. I hope that Putin has made lavish promises to Donald and Donald Jr. and Eric and Ivanka and Laura. I hope he has promised them the sun, moon, stars, and galaxy, because Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin's promises are worth what comes out of your butt into a toilet.
Mm-hmm. And I know you got my friend Dave, who lives in Hawaii, wanted to know if the fact that Donald Trump is now advocating for Putin means that somehow Putin won't ever use nukes in Ukraine or anywhere else. Is it off the table? What are your thoughts on that?
What makes the behavior of this shameful country of which we are citizens, Joan, is that our government negotiated with Ukraine in 1993 and signed, it might have been 1994, I'm bad with dates, a treaty that carries the force not only of international law, but United States law, because it was ratified by a law of the Senate, signed into law by the President of the United States at the time, under which Ukraine gave it up its nuclear arsenal. It had the third largest nuclear arsenal on Earth. The United States had the largest. No, I'm sorry. Russia had the largest. The United States had the second largest. Ukraine had the third largest. Ukraine gave them all up to Russia, and then many of those dismantled under the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, but gave them all up in return for security guarantees pledged to it by the Russian Federation and the United States of America, the United States of America through NATO. When the United States of America, it became clear in 2014, was not going to honor that obligation because we foisted upon Ukraine the Minsk Accords, which Putin never had intention of honoring, having already seized Ukrainian territory, Crimea and part of the Donbass. That was an abrogation of international law and United States law. And so they then asked for NATO membership to protect the rest of its territory because the law that we had signed, the treaty we had signed, had already been shredded. We did not live up to it. And so now the United States of America has said, Russia, we're with you. Ukraine caused this. Take whatever you want. So if anything, so that's one aspect of the nuclear issue. As to David's question, if anything, it makes it more likely that Russia, if it decides, could use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Because who's going to oppose Russia now? Where's the deterrent? There is no deterrent. We're not just a Russian ally, we're a subservient stooge to the Kremlin.
A lot of people believe that should we somehow undermine Ukraine to the point where Russia sees victory there, that Vladimir Putin will not stop with Ukraine. I know the people of Moldova have been very nervous since this invasion took place, and the Baltic states as well. Do you think, with the high cost Russia has paid for what it's gained in Ukraine, and also, rumors of Putin not being in the best of health, would it stop with Ukraine, or would he continue on?
Maybe that's how the cabal in Washington is going to spin this out. Maybe we will be producing weapons for Russia now, if we're a Russian ally.
Please, there's got to be a line that even the most spineless Republicans, there's got to be a line in the sand somewhere for...
Show me a spine, and then I'll believe there's a spine. I understand that this is 3 years since the beginning of this invasion. You know as well as I that I have dear friends in Ukraine, both Ukrainians and Americans, who have been there trying to do work to help keep the people alive. And so this angers me, and you know how I feel about Putin and how brutal that dictatorship is. But in the end, my agitation is because I've lost so many dear friends, politicians and investigative reporters, to bullets to the back of the head, thanks to orders from Vladimir Putin. And I have for years warned and seen that coming now. Donald Trump has just nominated to be the Deputy Secretary of Defense a man who pledged to kill for him, meaning kill here for him, to deploy U.S. troops to kill here Americans.
You talking about Graham Allen, the podcaster?
Yeah.
Who's now, I guess, second in command under Pete Hegseth? Because I saw this morning on social media.
Was it the deputy head of the FBI? It was one of the two. I can't remember which one.
Oh, yeah. There's another gem. But the Graham Allen was a podcaster.
Joint Chiefs as well.
And he's been hired by the Department of Defense under Pete Hegseth. He has previously claimed that Taylor Swift is a, quote, a witch and a devil who uses, quote, straight witchcraft. That is now the guy under Pete Hegseth.
I'm sorry, I got my hacks wrong. It's the nominee to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who promised to kill for Trump.
Oh no, who is that? I hadn't.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
I know that.
Yeah, the 3-star lieutenant general who is unqualified because he's never led a branch before to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
So, no, I don't see any spine. And somehow Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins have positioned themselves so that people think they're somehow centrist. They're as extremist, spineless MAGA stooges as all the rest of them in Congress who falsely carry the label Republican.
We need to take a break.
A fascist dictator in power.
Joel Ostrow and I are talking about Ukraine and Russia and our allegiance to Russia. We are going to continue this discussion when we come right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
And I am joined by political science professor Joel Ostrow from Benedictine University. He is an expert on all things Russia. What did you just send me? A statement from Robert Reich?
Yeah, this was last night, I believe. And he posted this.
He was in the Clinton administration, right?
The Secretary of Labor, yeah.
Yeah. Robert, is it Reich or Reich? Do you know?
Reich.
Reich.
So it's not like the German Reich.
Okay.
And an economics professor, very progressive, has even sort of expressed regret about his failures to prevent the turn of the Clinton administration of the Democratic Party so far to the center as it ended up going. So he's been a supporter of people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, basically wanting regulation and support of the middle class rather than the rich. But he put a meme in his social media yesterday that said the battle of our day is no longer about Democrats versus Republicans or left versus right. The choice right now is democracy or dictatorship, and we're sliding faster than I ever thought possible into the latter. Everyone must choose which side they're on now. So he's echoing things that I've been saying perhaps a little bit earlier and that Tim Snyder has been warning about.
I think it's interesting. You know, I agree with you. We're not seeing a lot of bravery in Republican leadership. We're not, at least yet, seeing the anger and the passion from Democratic leadership. But we do seem to be hearing it and seeing it in the grassroots. I think it was the Washington Post that was reporting that like 21 people working for Doge have quit because they say, well, basically that the people at Doge can't be trusted and are idiots. It seems to be the resistance this time around is ground up. And maybe that's what it has to be, Joel.
Yeah, but there still needs to be some kind of leadership. The only legitimate action of any disgruntled Republican is to make him or herself a former Republican. If they keep the label, like if you walk with a Nazi and you talk like a Nazi and you salute like a Nazi, guess what? So Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Michael Steele, there's a handful. But you run out of names really damned quickly. And the overwhelming majority are enthusiastically embracing the fascist dictatorial orientation of the MAGA cult that has seized power in this country. It's the only way. It's the only way I will describe the regime in control, because any other description allows people to be comfortable, such as your last caller in the last segment. And at the end of our discussion, yours and mine, Joan, last week. Midterm elections aren't going to save us. Courts are not going to save us. The courts can rule. The people can vote. But if you still think those outcomes are going to make a difference, if you still think those outcomes are going to change who is in power in this country, then you're missing what's happening. And we've been missing what's happening since 2015 to such an extent that Robert Reich can say, we need to decide now what side we're on. Democracy, dictatorship. It's not Democrat, Republican anymore.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about Allen from the Department of Defense. Were you talking about Dan Bongino under Kash Patel, the other podcaster with no experience in the agency in which they've been recruited for?
No, it was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I mean, they're all... Yes, I could say the same thing, but the literal point, his name is Dan Kane, is the nominee to be the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And I saw reporting, I can't remember if it was the Post or the Times, that he had pledged to Trump that he would kill for him.
Which I'm sure is exactly what Donald Trump is looking for, that kind of loyalty. But I'm sure the Senate will get up on its hind legs and talk to him about that. And I'm sure that they will have lots to say. Don't you think so?
Yeah. Trump has claimed that Kane said that he loved Trump and would kill for you while donning a Make America Great hat. That was reported on CNN 2 days ago and in the New York Times 2 days ago. So that's indirect reporting. So since Trump said it, apparently, I didn't read the whole article just now. Who knows?
It's
really unbelievable.
We know that we have a lot of people in this country who really don't pay attention. The ones who are now saying, "Oh, I didn't realize he said he was going to do this. I wouldn't have voted for him if I'd have known he was going to do this." So there's the low information voter, the uninformed voter. There are what I call like the anarchist voters who just hate government and say, just get in there and take a sledgehammer to it because there's too much, and we'll just put the pieces back together. But I think that there are some people who are well-informed, who know that government being completely disassembled isn't going to be good for anybody in the long run. People like this guy who you're talking about for the Joint Chiefs, when I try to think of what's motivating somebody like that, Joel, I keep coming back to racism. Because the dog whistle with Donald Trump is that he's going to make America white again. Get rid of DEI. Get rid of all those black people. Get rid of all those women. Remember when you didn't have to compete with any of them for a job or a promotion? I think that's the secret sauce. I don't know. What do you think?
I think the racism and hate is a tool. It's a tool for power and greed. I think that's always been the case. Sure, Hitler was anti-Semitic, but his genocidal campaign against Jews was a tool to rally Germans for his broader designs, for power, for conquest. And in this regime, who knows what Trump and Bannon and the others actually think. They certainly are people who express and act on hate, but they are still using hate as a tool to amass power and amass wealth for themselves and the cult around them. The broad brush of people, whether they were Germans in the 30s or Americans in the 2020s. We are not evil people. We don't sort of impulsively hate others, but fear can motivate us to do hateful things, and that is what they do with the fear-mongering around immigration and all the rest. Fear of the other. And if you can foment fear, you can move people to act on hate. And that is a timeless understanding that leaders with bad intent have known forever.
Yeah, got to have somebody to focus all of your frustration on, somebody who makes it not your fault.
Yeah. I mean, I know we only have a couple of minutes. The people of Ukraine have been and continue to fight heroically for their country, for independence, for freedom, for the right to speak their own language, for the right to sing their own songs, for the right to honor their history, for the right to pray in their own churches, for the right to live as they want to. Ukraine has never been a threat to anybody on earth. The name of the country is the borderland. It has, for its entire history, struggled to exist. And yet again, for the umpteenth time in its history, it has been occupied by a foreign entity that doesn't even recognize it as a thing. And unlike any other time in history, because they've had a taste of democracy and freedom and independence, they're fighting to their last blood to protect it. And even having been abandoned by those who promised to support it, they will continue to fight. And they should be an inspiration to us. And let us hope that somehow, some way, the good people of Canada and Europe can find a way to continue to support them. And perhaps others like Japan and South Korea can find ways to support them so that they can hold out long enough till maybe those who've been brainwashed in this country come out of their stupor, and somehow we can reorient to something that you and I, Joan, could recognize as decent.
Thank you, Joel. Joel Ostrow, professor of political science at Benedictine University, co-host of the World Discord podcast. Thanks for being here. Always an interesting conversation, Joel. Take care.
Thank you so much, Joan, always.
We're going to take a break for news. We'll be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
There has been a lot of reporting about what is going on in Washington, D.C., federal agencies that are being gutted, employees that are being locked out of their email and computer accounts, being told to just not show up for work. We see what is going on in Washington, but these orders to go home, to you are fired, you are you're on hiatus, you are paused, that affects a lot of people outside of Washington as well. In the Chicago Sun-Times, Brett Chase has been talking to people in the Environmental Protection Agency office of Chicago and finding out that all of this stuff going on in Washington, D.C. is going on in other cities as well. He joins us now to talk about this reporting. Brett, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me again.
So tell me, what is going on in the Chicago EPA office?
Well, you know, it's the beginning of, you know, somewhat what we expected, because we've been through this before. If you recall, in 2016, there was a reduction in force at EPA in Chicago, which was largely done just by, you know, letting people leave, retire, you know, quit, whatever, and then just not replacing them. That's over, you know, and I imagine that's what will happen again. So, you know, that itself, you know, took care of, you know, hundreds of employees. And as I've reported in the past, that meant fewer, you know, inspections, less enforcement, or I should say these things kind of go hand in hand, but it wasn't just because there was fewer people. That was all by design. There's just going to be a whole different, MO at the Environmental Protection Agency.
Tell me exactly. I know you've been talking to a lot of people about this. Tell me about some of those conversations.
So there's still a lot to be learned, but mostly, people at the Chicago EPA, which is a large regional office, it actually oversees 6 states, there was at least 1,000 people there at one point. I think they're down maybe about 100 people right now, which is a combination of people that just quit, people that were incented to quit. There's these probationary employees I wrote about recently. And what happens is, really just short, terse emails, maybe saying your job is gone, and or there's, we're all seeing the same thing in terms of, what Elon Musk is doing. There was this federal government, employee, across the whole workforce attempt to, just get people to, tell Elon what they did last week, or they're fired. It's like there's a lot of confusion and chaos, and I suspect not a lot of regulation going on at this point.
One thing that puzzles me, Brett, because some of these firings are making their way through the courts, and the courts are saying, no, you don't have standing to do that. I know that sometimes if you are no longer allowed in the building, or if you do get to your cubicle and you find that, you no longer have access to your computer, you no longer have your email, it's kind of ridiculous to just sit there. But since this is happening, since this is so widespread, I'm kind of surprised that more heads of agencies aren't consulting lawyers ahead of time. Like, what if we get these emails saying that we're all fired? Are they legal or are they not? Because if not, it would seem like even if you are locked out of your computer for the time being, it would still mentally give you a lot of relief to know that what's happening to you is illegal, and then hopefully at some point it will be undone.
Yeah, well, you actually had, some agency heads, and I'm talking, more broadly. They did push back on Musk's most recent, attempt to get rid of people, and the whole idea of the what do they call it? These deferred, resignations. That was the idea that just you can take some money now and just don't come back to the office. There's, as we've seen pretty much across the board with Trump administration, there's a lot of legal pushback, a lot of decisions that are being made in the court, and I guess I was surprised at just how aggressive things were right out of the chute here, because as I said, in 2016 there was an attempt to stifle the EPA. It's long been this held opinion by a number of Republicans that the EPA is stymieing economic growth, and certainly Trump had telegraphed that, like, he saw EPA as maybe getting in the way of this energy dominance that he keeps talking about. So
all those pesky regulations.
Regulations in climate related, rules, which of course climate, we're not even going to be talking about climate in the federal government for the next 4 years, right? And this happened in 2016 as well. Those scientists in Chicago started putting away their research even when Trump was elected in 2016, because he had made it clear that, we're not going to be focused on climate. So I honestly don't know what's happening with all the folks that were working on climate programs in the Chicago region. But they aren't going to be working on climate. And we will have, there's always programs that are going to be protected that have very bipartisan support. Like there's one that protects the Great Lakes, and that was one that, like, in the first Trump administration, he tried to zero out all funding. I think it was like $400 million a year to protect the Great Lakes. And that had enough, Republican support that, members of Congress actually did push back against the president. We're not seeing so much of that anymore, but, said, like, no, you cannot cut that. This is important to our constituents and to us. So, we'll see. Hopefully some environmental protections are capped. And Trump has said, like, we're going to have the cleanest air and the cleanest water ever. He makes a lot of promises.
And we're going to do that by cutting the EPA back. Yeah. It always amazes me when he does things like this. He's like it's like he's a magician. He wants to distract you with his right hand so you don't see what the left hand is doing.
It's as I said, there are a lot of Republicans, besides Trump, that had been dogging the EPA for years, and if you can think back, or just from the history, I mean, before we had an EPA, we had a lot of clean air, clean water, and and land pollution issues.
Yeah. We are going to take a real quick break. I'm talking to Brett Chase, who reports for the Chicago Sun-Times, and he has been talking to people at the Chicago office of the Environmental Protection Agency and finding out what these Muskian cuts mean for them and for us. We'll be back with more after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Chicago Sun-Times reporter Brett Chase is with me. He has been talking to people in the Chicago office of the Environmental Protection Agency. And Brett, you start one of the articles you've written, you start with a story about someone you talked to by the name of Nyla McCraney. Tell that story if you would.
Yeah, so she was a new hire, and she took a call from somebody in central Ohio, I think just north of Columbus, in like a rural area, who was smelling and experiencing this awful, pollution. These like lithium batteries were being burned by some, business near her. And so she got the ball rolling and, got people to, start, the enforcement folks to start looking at it, and it's now being dealt with. Interesting story about her. She was fired, and then within days, for some reason, her job was reinstated. She was. This happened to a handful of people, all young people, recent college graduates. But we're still talking about there was this Friday. I think it was Valentine's Day, actually. In a day. A lot of people just got one of these emails. Your job is done. You're a probationary employee. So sorry, you're gone. It's about 40, I think, is what the union estimated. But a half a dozen of those people, about 6 people, did get their jobs back. And she was one of them. It's interesting. In my article there, I focused on 3 people, and all 3 of those people ended up getting their jobs back. Now that's
is this one of those people have been talking about? Oh, we let everybody go who knew the nuclear codes and what to do with that. Oh, we better hire them back. Does anybody know how to reach them? I mean, is this like that?
It wasn't quite like that because these were brand new hires, right? These were people that worked like a month or two. But they were certainly some bright, promising people. There was a graduate from, Yale, had a master's from Yale in public health. So, I mean, these weren't like just some random hires. They were people that, really wanted to work for the agency and, had the credentials to do it, which is what you want. Because you think about, I mean, just so your listeners know, I mean, what the Environmental Protection Agency does, it protects our air and our water, and it carries out these 50-plus-year-old laws that were put in place because we used to have a really, really dirty situation in this country with the air pollution and water pollution, and the probably know about the burning river in Ohio, and the Lake Erie becoming being declared dead at one point. But with the pushback on the EPA has been, it's like, well, they just go too far. They've gone too far. We want them to protect our air and water, but then they just they're like these rogue regulators, whatever. But and now you're seeing just all sorts of crazy narratives about what the EPA does. And honestly, they're they're civil servants. Civil servants are getting a lot of heat and bad press right now, but
let's talk about
public health.
Yeah, people understand how things affect them personally. I know that in your story you talk about somebody who was working on clean water was let go. Somebody who was working in the Office of Air and Radiation was let go.
Yeah. Sure.
So what is going to be? Are we going to see any of this affect our daily lives? I mean, is the water that comes out of the tap, is it now more at risk? The water that is in Lake Michigan, is pollution going to be more of a problem than it has been? What are the real world effects, Brett, that regular citizens like me will see?
Well, you just touched on something I mentioned, the Great Lakes protection. So we in Trump term number one, you had Republicans that did push back and say, look, no, you can't cut that specific funding to protect our Great Lakes. And you can imagine how important Lake Michigan is, not just to Chicagoans, but to the whole region that depends on that for our fresh drinking water. So will that happen again? I don't know. We've seen a lot more complicit, behavior. It is going to be up to the politicians, the members of Congress, and that's going to come from what their constituents tell them. So, this is an opportunity for all of us, if we're worried about these things, to let your elected leaders know. I mean, so I don't, to answer your question, to be determined, are we going to have, I hope not, I mean, but we've had, horrible environmental disasters under, multiple administrations, right? I think about the train derailment in Ohio. I think about, Flint and so you need, your best and brightest, and committed civil servants to respond to those sort of things. And, I hope we don't have a threat to our air or water. I mean, we have some of the best, if you ask, any one of the last few mayors of Chicago, they'll tell you we have the cleanest water in the world, right? It's like we have good, Lake Michigan water, and it goes through one of the largest, treatment facilities in the world, and at another one, farther south. And so, there's a lot being done at the local and state level to protect our environment as well. But it's also, interesting to note that the dollars that flow to the Illinois EPA and then even down to the Chicago Department of Public Health, do come from the federal EPA. So.
Well, it occurs to me that regardless of how many people get torched in this misguided effort to try to eliminate waste, there's also going to be a precedent set. I mean, civil service jobs usually attracted people who had a particular area of science expertise, especially with the EPA, and who felt confident that they could have a career. It wasn't just like, well, I'm going to work for McDonald's for 6 months and then I'm going to, do something else. I mean, these were considered career path jobs. And I'm wondering, now that we've seen the literal chainsaw that Elon Musk is trying to take to these government agencies, even if the dust settles, I mean, this could affect recruitment by these agencies for years and years to come, couldn't it?
I mean, again, yeah, to be determined. I mean, those young people I interviewed a week ago, a little more a week ago, I mean, they were really committed. They really, really, really wanted to work for the EPA. They really looked at this as like an important mission for them. So you kind of want those people looking out for you, right? You know, if you're a taxpayer.
Well, theoretically. Mm-hmm. But then there's a lot of things that I want that I don't see. You know, I would love to see NASA be an independent agency and not need either SpaceX or Blue Origin anymore. But I don't know. I don't know if I even see that happening again in my lifetime. Some of these things are going to have far-reaching consequences, aren't they?
Oh, sure. I mean, again, we're literally weeks into the Trump administration. I can only fathom, you know, it's hard to imagine, actually. You know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe things will calm down. I don't know. I mean, there does need to be, you know, obviously, when you're talking about government in general, I mean, checks and balances, of course. So you mentioned the courts are already involved, and you know, we'll see how, you know, Congress responds with some of these things going forward.
Yeah, well,
and again, the groundswell from, you know, the constituents will, you know, have an impact on, you know, the members of Congress as well. So.
Well, I'm glad that you have been shining a light on these problems, and I have a feeling maybe I'm being too pessimistic, Brett. But my feeling is it'll get worse before it gets better. What's your sense of this?
I have never been good at predictions, so I do know that, you know, we get to pick another president every 4 years if you don't like what he's doing. I mean, and also you get to pick your, you know, members of Congress every 2 years. So, you know, you know, everything that's being done now and in the future will be, you know, will be reviewed by the voters again. So, you know, we'll see. But yeah, I can't. I'm terrible at predictions. I really am. I'm just like.
Well, the people you've spoken to, some of whom you featured in your article, how do they feel? Are they in shock? Are they disheartened?
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely, And I mean, so, you know. I will say, I mean, the young people that got their jobs back, I mean, they're very thankful, but, you know, they had to go through this unnecessary stress for some reason. But you know, when you talk to the union leadership, for instance, I mean, they just describe this chaos and this, you know, this uneasy, you know, feeling overall. But they went through this once before, you know, as I said. I mean, they I don't know if you recall the first go around with Mr. Trump, but his first pick for the EPA after 2016 was Scott Pruitt, whose only experience with the EPA was that he was the Oklahoma Attorney General who kept suing the EPA. So now he has a former member of Congress, Lee Zeldin, who, you know, so knows a little bit about government, but, you know, has really, you know, catered to the party line about the energy dominance. We need less regulations. We need, you know, more energy. We need it for, you know, everything, including artificial intelligence, you know. You know, a lot of these campaign promises were just, you know, they were just made months ago, right? So we'll see how things land.
What are you working on now, Brett?
Oh, just all sorts of things. I've been working on a lot of environmental justice stories over the last 7 years, and I am, you know, absolutely, you know, interested in how Trump's approach to environmental justice, which is basically gutting what Joe Biden did over the last 4 years. Now, I will say that Joe Biden built like environmental justice office of the EPA, like, you know, quite a bit, like from 40 workers to 250 And so now, Trump early on has said, like, we're getting rid of environmental justice. We're going to, we need to cut government, blah, blah. And I think that some of these environmental justice issues, well, we know they're going to continue. So, it'll be continued, but also at the, like a lot of these solutions will be determined at the local level. We've got that right here in Chicago. We've had no shortage of environmental justice, debates from General Iron to, asphalt plants to, all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brett, thank you so much for sharing your reporting with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Brett Chase is a Chicago Sun-Times reporter who focuses on things having to do with the environment. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with Rich Eberwein and find out what's on Heartland Signal when we come back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am very pleased to welcome back to our airwaves Rich Eberwein. He is a reporter for Heartland Signal. They are the digital arm of WCPT, our cousin, our sibling over there on the website. And they do a lot of really interesting reporting. They break a lot of stories. And Rich joins us every week to share with us 3 stories we might have missed. Rich, what have you got for us today?
Hey, how's it going today, Joan? Starting off with air traffic controllers. Last week, Heartland Signal clipped a moment of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy addressing cuts to the Federal Aviation Administration. And as we know, the air traffic controllers have been dealing with a hiring shortage that dates back years prior to Trump's second term, and instead of addressing that shortage by maybe incentivizing people to pursue these jobs, the Trump administration and Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has been making cuts to the FAA, including layoffs to confirmed over 350 employees. This is proving especially dangerous to do that at this time, since 84 people have died as a result of plane crashes and air disasters since Trump took office last month. But Trump and his allies have had nothing but praise for Musk's cuts. And last week, Heartland Signal clipped this moment from Sean Duffy, and we have a audio of that.
We talk about the FAA layoffs. Industry experts say it's unsafe, it's impacting safety. How can you assure the American public that they're okay to fly right now?
Yeah, so the question was in regard to FAA layoffs. So to be clear, the FAA has 46,000 employees. This was, I think, 352 employees. And the employees that were laid off were employed for less than a year. So these are not the highest skilled members of the FAA.
Well, like they're doing with a lot of the agencies, they're getting rid of the probationary and the preliminary employees because they don't have to go through the union process. They don't have to follow civil service rules. They're the one group of employees that they can terminate freely without much in the way of consequences, except, of course, for the jobs that those people were actually doing.
Yeah. Duffy's trying to spin this as if everybody who was terminated were like completely useless. It's, some of them were aviation assistants and air traffic controller, maintenance mechanics, people who contribute to the aviation industry's continued safety regulations, which are imperative right now because of the aforementioned plane disasters that we've been experiencing, and the administration isn't doing anything to address this. They, in addition to the layoffs, they've implemented a freeze on hiring all federal workers and urging all federal workers to take a buyout in exchange for their resignation. Trump has given watery answers to these concerns, saying that we're looking to find a solution. But I think given these airline disasters, everything they've done so far is not helping.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of lawyers were advising people don't Don't take those offers. Don't take those alleged buyouts, because they're not really buyouts. And if you say, yeah, I'm going to do that and I'm going to pack up my stuff and go home, they said they were going to pay me through September. Don't be surprised when there aren't any more deposits made into your bank account. Yeah. I don't know why people would even believe them. Anyway, before I get too worked up about that, what else have you got for us?
More cuts. So with potential cuts to Medicaid and SNAP in the new budget that they're supposed to be voting on at some point soon in Congress, they are prompting public backlash for Republican congressmen, including Representative Mark Alford, who represents a rural part of western Missouri that overwhelmingly supported Trump in the last election. During a town hall last week, he was confronted with a room full of angry constituents for failing to stand up to the blatant conflicts of interest involved with Musk and his Doge cuts, and just the administration's efforts in general in recent months. And we have another clip of that that we could play.
Elon Musk has contracts with the federal government. But he is also, I think, doing an effective job. Conflict of interest! Show me! There are a lot of people who don't want to see waste, abuse, and fraud weeded out. Some of them here today.
I don't want him in charge of it.
But he is appointed by the president, chief executive, who can appoint whoever he can appoint you.
I thought it was your job. It is your job.
Elon Musk and the president have agreed that if there is any potential conflict of interest, that he will refuse it. And it's clear today that some people don't believe that would happen.
It is your job.
In the next election, to elect someone that you believe.
We didn't elect Elon. Remember your oath. You don't represent us. You represent Elon Musk. You're a violation of your oath, sir.
Whew.
Yeah. So, this is a deep red district in, Missouri, deep red state. And we're just over a month into Trump's administration, and we're already seeing this kind of backlash to his policies and his administration's efforts. As the lady said, that they're obviously very upset with the conflicts of interest with Musk. And just today, his Starlink technology, or SpaceX, got another contract, government contract. So as he continues to cut and slash and lay people off, his companies are continuing to financially benefit for taxpayer subsidies.
Yeah. And the rest of us sit back and wait for Republicans to decide that they've had enough and start actually creating an opposition. But I understand it. It's like in Africa when the wildebeest migrate. No wildebeest wants to be the first one to cross the river, because if there are crocodiles, those first couple are liable to lose their lives. I feel like that's what's going on with Republicans in the Senate and in Congress. Nobody wants to be that first wildebeest for fear that they will just lose everything. But I think once we get one or two wildebeest to stand up, the rest of the wildebeest will follow, Rich.
I hope so. I mean, I don't know what the standing up is going to look like. That's the part that worries me, because Musk, unfortunately, has all of the power basically right now, right? Mm-hmm. And my question to these congressmen is, where do you see this ending? Like, it's not going to end with Trump's presidency, right? Like, Elon Musk is the wealthiest person in human history, and he's already seemingly gained control of the executive branch of the government and wielding unbelievable power right now. Mm-hmm. That's not just going to end after Trump's presidency.
Oh, well, did you hear today? Apparently, Donald Trump is going to have his first cabinet meeting, and Elon is going to be there.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he was holding court over the cabinet meeting. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has the vast wealth to buy elections effectively, and what's to stop him from doing it again in 2028 with whoever the candidate is, probably J.D. Vance. But it's not going to stop it. He's only 53 years old. He could effectively just retain this position if the Republicans in Congress continue to just placate and bend the knee to him. I don't see how they can just keep standing idly by, especially when there are unpopular cuts to programs like Medicaid and SNAP on the way that is going to put their own reelections in jeopardy as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that is the one thing that I think is going to make them brave. Not doing the right thing, not the oath they took to the country, but the idea that if they go along to get along, that they will be voted out of office. Whoa, now you're talking backbone.
Yeah. I would just urge them to, keep all of this in mind. Like, this is, you're really going to be, just dominated by Elon Musk for the rest of our lives. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is, I don't get it. I don't get the calculation that they're making in their head.
No, I don't either. And I agree with you that I think Elon is a supporter of J.D. Vance. There is some speculation that, remember when J.D. Vance was in Europe and, after he spoke at the Munich Security Council, didn't meet with any officials, elected officials of the government, but rather met with the very, very far right, basically neo-Nazi party in Germany. Yeah. And there's some speculation that both Elon Musk and Peter Thiel would like to see that kind of government, that kind of anti-Semitic, white on top kind of a government, and they think J.D. Vance is their puppet, just like I think right now Donald Trump is a useful idiot. Donald Trump, I'm sure Elon Musk, blows, rainbows and unicorns at Donald Trump on a regular basis, and Trump eats it up. But the bottom line is, he's being used. He's being used by Putin. He's being used by Musk. And I think that they think the young, useful idiot is J.D. Vance. But that's a terrifying discussion maybe for another day, Rich. Yeah. What else have you got before I go too far down this dark tunnel?
Well, we're still there. On to Vivek Ramaswamy, who, announced his candidacy for governor in Ohio yesterday. Officially, he's been rumored to be doing this for the last couple of weeks. But, I could see this unfavorability of the current Trump administration, and we've seen his poll numbers been taking a nosedive in recent days. And he just endorsed Ramaswamy's governor run in Ohio. So I think it's just important to highlight that this is, again, I feel like a broken record talking about Ohio elections, but this is a very important cycle in 2026 for Ohio, and I'm very interested to see how Ramaswamy's attachment to not only Trump and his endorsement, but Elon Musk also endorsed him, and of course, Ramaswamy was supposed to be Musk's, co-chairman of the Doge administration, so it would be interesting to see how his involvement in those things will affect his governor run, and, the primary shouldn't be a problem for him because now he's the clear front runner after receiving those endorsements and will probably be financially backed by Elon Musk. But it's going to be interesting how the general election there plays out, especially when we find out who the candidate is going to be on the Democratic side.
And, there is some speculation that part of the reason why Vivek Ramaswamy is running in Ohio is because even though he and Elon Musk were supposed to be co-equal in this new Doge effort, it began to appear as if Elon was really in charge and Vivek was somehow subordinate to him. That was the feeling. Supposedly they divided up, be like, okay, you're going to do this and I'm going to do this. But then apparently what Vivek was doing was made to appear to be of lesser importance, and rather than having an acrimonious split, he just decided to go to where the pastures were greener, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah, there would seem to be some friendly fire going on, and as we say, Musk is obviously the one who has all the power and money, so he decided that probably that Vivek Ramaswamy was better useful elsewhere, per se. And Ramaswamy in his speech yesterday was basically touting all of the cuts that were being made and the good progress of the administration, and also one unpopular thing that I think could come back to bite him is he was backing this idea by the Republicans right now of tying Medicaid to work requirements, which I saw a report from Center on Budget and Policy Priorities had a report earlier this month that as many as 36 million people could have their health care coverage if this idea is implemented, are at risk of losing their health care coverage, and which is almost half the number of people on Medicaid.
Because that doesn't take into the fact that a lot of people on Medicaid, they're extremely poor, they're disabled, they have chronic health conditions. It's not like they're sitting at home eating bonbons and, you're going to make me work for this money like that. Like somehow it doesn't make any sense when you really look into what's going on. Yeah.
And it's just one of those ideas. And then like having a Doge Musk acolyte in charge of the Ohio government, I don't know. I can't see it happening. And
I hope you're right. I grew up in Ohio, but the Ohio that I grew up in bears no resemblance to the state as it exists today. I would have told you that somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy didn't have a prayer of getting the governor's chair, but now I just don't know. That state is not what it used to be.
Yeah, I just see so much baggage tied to Ramaswamy with his ties to Doge and Musk, and then also the way he got rich in the first place was basically swindling investors into believing that he had a cure for Alzheimer's. There's just so much there that I suppose is consistent with the Republicans in Ohio right now, who are no stranger to swindling voters. They laugh about it behind closed doors, when they lied about the gerrymandering ballot measure last November. So maybe it's consistent, but I think you could really see one of the most fascinating political matchups in recent memory if Sherrod Brown gets into this race, where you have, a guy who is consistently advocating for working class values and improving the social safety net, compared to Ramaswamy, who is, Elon Musk Jr. essentially, and tied to just swindling people out of millions of dollars. It would be one of the most fascinating races of all time, in my opinion.
That's an interesting word for it. Fascinating. Well, Rich, I expect you to keep a close eye on things and let us know how this develops. I think if Sherrod Brown gets into the race, it's going to be a really fun one to cover.
Endlessly fascinating. All right. Thanks a lot, Joan.
Thank you. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
You may have heard on our airwaves a promo, an ad that we are running, letting you know that it is the 50th anniversary celebration for the DuPage County Dems. They're holding a gala Sunday, March 2nd. And the chair of the DuPage County Dems, Reed McCullum, is here to talk about this. Hey, Reed, how are you?
Joan, thanks for having me on. I'm doing really well.
Wow. The DuPage County Dems has been around for 50 years?
Yeah, apparently it's been around longer than I've been alive or lived in DuPage, but we're very excited about that anniversary and having a wonderful event to celebrate it and to raise the funds that we need to help keep getting Democrats elected up and down the ballot across DuPage County.
It's really interesting because a lot of the collar counties were always reliably reddish, if not flat out red. And then there was this big blue Chicago kind of in Cook County sitting in the middle of it all. But I've been noticing that the collar counties have been getting notably more Democratic. Why do you think that shift is taking place?
Well, I mean, it's definitely true. I mean, back in 2016, 8 years ago, when I first was getting involved after Donald Trump won the first time, there was only one Democratic county board member in DuPage County out of 18. I was part of the effort to get rid of Representative Peter Raskin in 2018, reelected Sean Casten. And, two things happened is that, the demographics in Collier County and DuPage have been changing for years, but the backlash to Trump and everything that he stands for and the Republicans becoming extremists even then was, the major galvanizing force for why we were able to get so many Democrats elected that year in 2018. And then we've continued that momentum, and unfortunately the Republicans have continued to become more and more extreme and authoritarian, and that has allowed us to be very competitive. We now have in DuPage County Democratic County Board Chair, Deb Conroy, who's done a tremendous job. We have a supermajority on the county board. It's 12-6. We have a lot of the countywide offices. Every member of Congress that represents DuPage is a Democrat. And the last place where we need to make a lot of progress is the local level of government, which is what is on the ballot on April 1st, from school boards to local municipal offices, township offices, where Republicans still have huge majorities in those offices, and we're hoping to change that on April 1st. And the gala allows us to have the resources to be able to support the candidates running in the spring.
I follow Jessica Craven on TikTok, and she had a conversation with a young man who was her physical therapist, who told her that he didn't vote in the last election. He didn't feel that his vote mattered at the national level. And she explained to him that even if he felt that way, which she didn't agree with, but even if he felt that way, she explained to him the importance of down ballot races. She explained to him, when you vote for your county officials or your city officials or your village officials, the people who lead your municipality, those are the people who really write the laws and the rules that affect how you live. Talk for a minute some this election that's coming up and some of these local races. Talk about the way the people elected to those offices really influence the lives of the people of DuPage County.
And there's so many ways. It really is true that local government has a bigger impact in people's lives in our community than what happens in D.C. We have library boards out here where there are Christian nationalist parties with slates that want to ban books and have people in our community, not feel safe to be here and who they are. We have, really contested races in large cities like Naperville, where the consequences for local government are huge for people that live there. And, just across the board, it's so important to have, it's the front line of defense, really, for a lot of the radical cuts and extremism that's happening. So the social safety net towards, also protecting immigrant families and making sure people know their rights. It is the local elected officials that are really the front line of that.
Yeah. That's a message I think people like you and people like me need to get out more. And then I think we will see a higher turnout of younger voters. The youngest voters traditionally show up in the smallest numbers. But we will also impress upon them the importance of these races affecting how they live. Where you park your car. Well, those rules are set up by, your municipality. The people you elect to those offices are going to make those decisions. I mean, it really is the basics of how you live your life.
Right. I'll mention, too, that the Republican counterpart to myself, the Republican chair of the Democrat of DuPage County, Kevin Coyne, started a hate group called Safe Suburbs, which is at the forefront of the divisive messaging that wants to ban books, attacking candidates on the ballot, sowing fear about othering people in our community. And it's motivating to me to make sure that we're supporting strong, values-aligned candidates and doing everything we can to connect with voters with a positive message about how these wonderful candidates that we've got can make a difference in their everyday lives, for sure.
How can people sign up to come to the gala?
Yeah, so our website, DuPageDemocrats.com. Right on the front of the website, you can sign up to do two things. You can get a ticket and come to our gala, or you can sign up to help us write 100,000 handwritten postcards to reach these voters across the county. We've got Senator Dick Durbin coming, Governor J.B. Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, 6 members of Congress coming, just a tremendous number of speakers, and then talk about the importance of young voters. Our keynote speaker is Anderson Clayton, who's 27 years old, the chair of the Democratic Party of North Carolina, and a friend who just is an incredible speaker and one of the rising stars of reaching out to young folks and rural voters and just meeting everybody where they are with a positive message about why they should support the Democrats.
Reed McCollum, chair of the DuPage County Dems, thank you for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful event. Thanks, Reed.
Thanks so much, Joan. Appreciate it.
That is going to do it for me. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez is, of course, up next. She's going to have a guest co-host, Carmen Navarro-Gurcon. They're going to talk to Dan Schaefer and some of Patty's regular guests. I will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Please join me then. We're going to have a conversation with Tom Hartman in the middle of our day tomorrow. Always a pleasure to have Tom Hartman on the show. Again, have a great evening, my friends. Remember, Richard Chu will be here at 6 a.m. Listen to him. And I will see you tomorrow at 2. Have a great evening. Good night.